Alright, and welcome back to the latest episode of The Adventures of the Monk and the Monarch, featuring me, the Monarch, and my co-host, Mildra.
Hello.
So, today we're doing a bit of a lighter episode because I'm going to an anime convention here in a few days, and I didn't have time to research some of the other topics we wanted to talk about.
Part of that's on me. I end up suggesting very heavy topics.
I like those topics. It's just the timing's not on my side right now. I've had a lot to do these past few weeks.
I forgot that said convention was on the horizon. So
Yeah,
little column A and a little column B. That's how this goes.
indeed. Like, this will be going up, like, just after the Anime Matsuri, so I won't have any weird stories to tell about this year's. You'll have to wait until I get that write-up done.
And we're not doing a part 2.
Yeah, especially not just to cover one convention. But as normal, we'll start off with what it is we've been watching these past month. So what have you been seeing lately?
So, on the recommendation of my brother, I ended up seeing Buchigire, which is a new addition. There's only two episodes so far, and this is right within my alley of a bunch of misfits being called to do something bigger.
I'm not familiar with Buchigire.
See, here's the tricky part is trying to summarize Buchigire without going into spoilers. It's also known as Shine On Bakumatsu Bad Boys.
That is a fantastic name.
The best way to describe it is this is during the feudal era. The Shinsengumi has been almost completely wiped out. A handful of criminals have been chosen as substitutes. So if you've seen the sports film The Replacements, you're not far off. I know that somebody might dismiss it because it has a 6.4 out of 10 on my anime list, but as I've said in the past, fuck the aggregate. This is the same aggregate that has been trying very hard to make sure that nothing but Brotherhood stays at the top anime, and got real pissy when it got vote bombed, and then interspecies reviewers got at the top list for like a week.
Look, Interspecies Reviewers was legitimately a hilarious show. But yes.
Oh, it is, and you cannot look me in the eye and tell me that the opening isn't trying to be a legally distinct version of YMCA. Now, much like go back and watch the opening for Stardust Memory and tell me that they really, really wanted Danger Zone.
Yeah.
To the point where I'm pretty sure my buddy Smaxo actually spliced the two together, and it works a little too well.
Oh, I love those weird mixes.
You've probably seen the, internet legend about how you can perfectly sync up Dark Side of the Moon to The Wizard of Oz by hitting play right after the second roar.
I mean, I've never actually seen if that works or not, but I have heard it.
This was one of those stories that predated the internet, and well, I won't say predated the internet, but certainly predated YouTube. But then people put up YouTube videos testing this little theory. I have no idea how this theory started. It just happened. And I don't think there's any association between one or the other, because that would be a little too perfect.
But here's the thing. Did it sync up?
Yes.
That's fantastic. Like, I'm sure that was probably a sheer coincidence. I've not had a chance to watch quite as much as I normally do. But I think the last thing I watched, what was it? It was an old retro 80s one. Something Metal Skin Panic Maddox 1. That was the name. I was trying to remember the whole thing.
I'm pretty sure that Anime Ego, or at least the successor to it, kickstarted a re-release for that.
I mean, I'd be down. Because, alright, the story's kind of stupid. Some government, new mech suit now exists. Like, it's not giant mech suits. It's kind of like bigger than a car style mech suit. But they mess up. There's an accident. It's programming, or it wasn't turned off of scramble mode, I believe it was called. And it ends up in the hands of just some kid who knows how to work with machines. He gets stuck inside of it while trying to mess around and figure out how it works. wants to meet his girlfriend before she goes off to college and ends up like running through town in this machine, getting chased down by mercs and government officials. There's almost no time spent like establishing any of these characters, so I don't really care about the story. The action is fantastic though. Like, it's got that old kind of the 80s grit to the film, which something about that just makes a lot of like the crashes and impacts seem fantastic. So it's a really good movie if you just want like a good action flick to hold you over. Just don't expect much more and you're fine.
Truth be told, I've always had a soft spot for anime that go out of their way when it comes to technical design.
Yeah.
Just all of the moving parts, especially in science fiction anime, and even more especially in anything cyberpunk adjacent.
Yeah, this does a good job with the small details and all that.
I know some people are going to rip it a new one over the story, but the fact of the matter is there are some films that are meant to be story centric, and there are some that are not.
Yeah. The only thing I ask is if you're not going to be a story centric movie, just don't spend too much time on it. Otherwise, I've also watched I'm Quitting Heroing. Like, I kind of have a minimum number of episodes I will watch for a review. I put that at 6 episodes. And it's not like if the show is bad, I'll stop watching. It's if after 6 episodes, if this show gives me no reason to keep watching, that's where I'll stop. Have I not had that restriction and I was just watching this normally, I never would have made it past the 3rd episode. But episode 6, out of nowhere, the show just gets good. It's basically a story of the mercenary or soldier who doesn't really have a place anymore, is kind of the core idea of it. A lot of the show's kind of played as a joke because, well, the first episode was funny because he applies to work for the demonic kingdom, which he pretty much single-handedly put down. But it's like an actual job interview he's showing up for.
Mm-hmm.
It's a joke that's funny for about an episode. But it takes so long before it kind of starts taking itself seriously and gets really good and interesting. A lot of people aren't going to make it that far if they're not, like, into the show's humor.
Well, let's be honest. There are some people whose attention span is so short. Even Elric would call them a midget.
Yeah, just because it is a really slow one to get interesting, and even by the end, there's only like 3 out of the 6 characters that are important I actually like or find interesting at all. It's a hard one to recommend.
Although I wouldn't. The idea of a mercenary who doesn't have a place after the big bad is laid low. I think it would be interesting for someone to explore in a Outer Haven kind of way.
I could see that. Like,
somebody trying to build a Outer Haven place in a fantasy setting where those who don't have a place. I don't know. There's something there.
oh yeah, like it's always kind of an archetype I've just liked. Like, I liked it here. It was really good with Violet Evergarden. Even something like Akari from Paranoia Agent. It's one of my favorite characters in any anime. I know he's not like a soldier, but same idea. It just works for me. Anything else you've been watching?
Because of the fact that one of my students had not seen it yet, and I've been exploring early 2000s anime with him, I had an excuse to introduce him to Scryed.
Yep, that's one of those shows. I liked it, but when I think back, I'm like, am I remembering this show right? Am I gonna rewatch it again one day and be like, what the hell was I thinking?
I will freely admit that it's one of those shows that has the problem that a lot of shows had in the 2000s of people trying to adapt to the changes with DigiPaint. I know some people are going to say if they look at a Blu-ray version that it looks ugly, but here's the thing. This was not an isolated case in 2001. A lot of people had gone from a more traditional style to fully diving into digital animation. And there's a reason the term teething troubles is used quite a bit in engineering, because that's what ended up happening. It would be completely unfair to single out just this one anime or or the like for this problem, because this was an industry-wide thing that people were trying to get used to.
See, in my memory, I don't recall it looking bad, but it's been so long since I've watched that one.
A lot of people seem to misunderstand or even disunderstand the difficulties when trying to upscale older tech, whether it be film, whether it be animation, even video games, to modern software. Just to use a video game example, a lot of old games that I have, the speed is directly tied to the potential speed of your graphics card. Which, if you had a graphics card from 1996, not too much of a problem. You even got a mid-range graphics card in 2022, you got a problem. Because now all of a sudden everything is on fast forward. When it comes to shooters, there's a reason why nobody wants to use DOSBox. People would rather use a port onto the source engine that has widescreen and has proper mouse support, especially with some older games. Because some of them they had mouse support, but not in the full free look mouse support that we're all used to these days. Because the first game that had that full range of mouse support was a game that most people didn't play because it was on the Mac. That being Marathon.
And I know, like, in the old days of emulation, there were the weird issue people came across is when they realized a lot of those, like, old console games were made, like, with the curvature of those old school screens in mind. Mm-hmm. So when you just suddenly put that on a flat screen, it starts to look weird. So adjustments have to be made.
The same thing applies when it comes to film.
Yeah.
If you try and take a film from like the 70s and try and directly upscale it, you end up seeing a bunch of stuff that you weren't supposed to see, and it ends up looking worse.
Yeah. Wasn't that one of the problems with The Hills Are Alive, I think it was, where you could kind of tell they kind of painted the grass in the higher definition? I might be thinking of the wrong movie.
I can't say for certain because I'm not sure we're thinking of the same movie.
Yeah.
But it would not surprise me if that did happen.
Yeah, it was just something about they painted it because of the season, but they wanted the green grass. But just the higher definitions made that obvious. Something they weren't expecting to happen.
You look at grindhouse style cinema and you're going to see a lot of cheating.
Yeah.
Much in the same way you look at a lot of anime from the 80s and 90s, and you're going to, especially TV anime, you're going to see a lot of cheating when it comes to cell reuse. A lot of people point and laugh at the cell reuse in Sailor Moon, but that was a common practice back then.
Yeah, I know it was pretty egregious in Dragon Ball Z for some of those fights.
Sailor Moon's the more egregious one when it comes to blatant cell reuse.
I can never get too mad about that. It's a little distracting once you notice it, but eh.
It'd be like getting on costume design in a monster movie from the 50s.
Yeah.
Like, no shit, we've got better stuff nowadays. But I do think a lot of people misunderstand how difficult it is, and why so many people have a high opinion of Void Point because of how out of their way they've been going to try and take older games and make them work on modern PCs. Especially what they did with the Blade Runner RPG. That was not RPG, the Blade Runner PC game that didn't have Harrison Ford in it, because even for its time, trying to get that to run was a bit of a mess.
Yeah, I can't comment too much on old PC games. I was a console gamer for most of my youth. It's what I had.
I'm a historian, as you're well aware.
Oh yeah.
But Scryed to me still holds just as well. I did make a bit of a rule, and I told him this when we'd start watching. If you make any JoJo comparisons, I'm going to make a tally. For every tally at the end of a viewing session, you have to drink one shot of the pain glass. Have I told you about the pain glass?
No, you have not.
This is a punishment game I've used on some of my students whenever somebody gets caught cheating, or if I'm doing tabletop and they do something really stupid. The pain glass is a shot glass filled with water, salt, sea salt, pepper, black pepper, Tabasco sauce, Frank's Red Hot sauce, tiger sauce, sriracha, and ground up jalapeno seeds.
Well, that sounds horrifying.
Well, it's called the pain glass. I wouldn't be doing my job if it wasn't. So for every time he makes a JoJo reference, I count one of them, and the total amount he has to drink that many shots. As far as how could I have that prepared, one, I have a handful of shot glasses that I got from a bar that closed up in one of the places I used to live, because they were just getting rid of stuff, so I took some. Two, it's not like I make each batch individually. I make all of it in a blender, and then I pour it out very carefully. You ever try and pour something out of a blender into a shot glass? It's not easy.
I'd imagine.
And of course, I'm watching him, so he can't cheese out on it and say that he drank it. And in the first viewing, he ended up going through 7 shots. Now, I didn't try and kill him with it because I did have emergency yogurt after the fact.
Emergency yogurt.
Yogurt is what I use to get rid of spicy, because oil cancels itself out.
Just never heard the term before. Emergency yogurt.
I used it when I ate the Carolina Reaper a few years ago when I lost a bet. I had this tub of Greymont plain yogurt just sitting on the table, because the thing is I had to eat the Reaper, and then I had to go with only a glass of water for 5 minutes. Okay. You would think that'd be easy, but
oh, look, I don't eat spicy food, but in an old job, someone just like made some of our teriyaki noodles with a bunch of the Carolina Reapers. Like, sure, I'll give that a try. What could go wrong with this? I don't even eat jalapenos. It was good.
The other option for the punishment is a bottle of bacon soda.
Huh.
That's BACON soda.
I figured. That I'm like, I don't know if I'd want to take that one over the spicy.
It tastes like what would happen if you mixed club soda with bacon grease.
That's horrifying.
Well, like I said, it's a punishment. A way to get him to stop making JoJo references. After the first session, I didn't have to do it again. My mindset is if I need to be that direct with teaching a lesson, then the best way to do it is to do something so heinous, so vile, so absolutely disgusting that even thinking about trying that again would be too much.
I'm not gonna lie, I might break a rule once just to see how that bacon soda tastes. There's a weird part of my mind that wants to know.
That'd be kind of like how people saw holding the rock as a rite of passage when my grandpa was still teaching physics. If you got busted, he'd have you hold this big rock while you're taking a photo. And when I say big, I'm saying this rock was about the size of a small child. And you had to hold it up with both. You had to hold that thing up with both hands, and then hold it while he's taking a photo. But eventually, because of the fact that people would see these photos on the wall, and they figured, hey, I could use this to get myself famous. People started getting them trouble on purpose to do it, so the whole thing got retired.
That sounds about right.
But
yeah, back to Scried.
A lot of the motifs of the extremes of freedom and authority still hold up. A lot of people make the JoJo comparison because of the stand abilities, but truth be told, if all you see out of JoJo is stands, then I don't think you've been watching JoJo.
Yeah. Like, I don't really see it. I can kind of see it, but even if I'd seen or heard of JoJo's
when it comes to the manga, I'm not going to argue that.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm just saying that, like, if I'd only seen that first, or if I'd seen or read JoJo's first, I don't know if stands is the first thing I would have thought when seeing that.
Well, for a lot of people, we didn't. Yeah. The only thing from JoJo we had was that previous attempt to just adapt Stardust Crusaders. Which was
the one that did like the second half first because he didn't know if it was gonna continue or if he could get the budget to do more.
Yeah, and there was the fighting game on the Dreamcast, which is actually still pretty good, and that one did get a more modern port in the 7th generation. I think for a lot of folks it wasn't the case, and I will note that we ended up watching the dub because the coin landed on tails, because that's how I decide these kind of things. Is if we're watching sub or watching dub, coin toss.
I don't
Sometimes
remember it being a bad dub.
No, it isn't for its time. I'm pretty sure if somebody wanted to be snobbish, they could say that it is. But it's important to remember that the early 2000s was when you had our first massive expansion when it came to anime that we were getting stateside. We'd get a few in the VHS trading if you were really lucky, but the introduction of DVDs was far more helpful to anime than VHS was.
VHS days is how I originally saw Angel Sanctuary. That's a fun one.
Well, like I said, with the VHS stuff, it was whatever you could get lucky with, or could stumble onto in like a library or a rental store.
But yeah, that sudden flood with DVDs, it was great. Gave you a lot of stuff to watch. Got some sketchy dubs at times. But I actually thought overall the dubbing was never as bad as some people made it out to be.
I'm a little bit biased when it comes to dubs because I've sat through those old Animiego dubs. Any bad dub you can find in the 2000s is nowhere near as bad as those were.
Yeah, I was trying to remember which one's Animiego.
The original Bubblegum Crisis, Vampire Princess Miyu, Megazone 23, which would get multiple dubs over the years, because it is a historically important work. There were a few others, but those are the two main ones. And the Miyu stuff was mostly the OVA series, not the TV series, which was better, even if it was distributed by Tokyo Pop, who distributed more printed media than they did DVDs. The other thing to keep in mind with Animiego is that they were really the first independent dubbing studio.
There was going to be a bit of a bumpy road with that.
Mm-hmm. You know, in the same way that a lot of low budget grindhouse folks are just working with whatever they can get their hands on.
Otherwise, other than that, I think I've only actually sat down and watched one other show this past. It's your boy Kong Ming, which is just a fantastic title, and I love to say it.
I can understand why that would be the case.
I didn't know what I was going to expect going into this show. Like, I was thinking it was either going to be really stupid or something just so goofy and ridiculous it was great. I got neither of these things, because at no point does this show treat bringing Kong Ming into the modern day and making him somebody's manager as a joke. Like, it plays...
We should note for context, Kong Ming is also known as Zhuge Liang.
If you're like me, the first place you probably heard the name was Dynasty Warriors. Any of the Three Kingdoms stuff is going to have him.
Yeah, Kong Ming was his courtesy name, which is a complicated thing. But he was Liu Bei's strategist.
I was convinced by the end of episode 1 it was going to be one of my favorite anime this year. I'm not saying it's a perfect show. Like, Kong Ming himself feels a little too untouchable by the end of it. Like, everything just goes so smoothly for him. He seems to be able to do no wrong. So I don't really feel the tension at any point during this first season. Aside from that, though, it's so hard to sit here and explain this, because I don't think the show would work as well if it wasn't an ancient Chinese strategist, even though the story itself doesn't necessitate. Why can I not say this word? It does not require him to be a Chinese strategist. It just helps. Like, have you sat down and watched this one yet?
Not yet. But again, my brother has spoken quite highly of it.
I wouldn't even put it as anywhere near the funniest thing I've watched this year, but it very easily makes you care. You can see why this guy who, like, at the end of his life just wished to be reborn in a world of peace, him meshing in with, like, this weird EDM club scene makes way more sense than it should, and why he kind of picks this girl to be her manager. It all makes way more sense than it realistically should, considering who he is. But you start to care about all these people very quickly. There are two things that kind of, or two other things other than the one I mentioned, that make it a little hard to say it's going to be the best, or at least my favorite anime of the year. One is, while the singer is really good, it's one of those things, a lot of the lines are sung in English, and she obviously does not speak English. It can be distracting. And it's not like just like a line here or there. There's a lot of lines sung in English. I also have absolutely no idea how to judge Japanese rap. Even if I got that translation in front of me, it's like, I don't know if these are clever punchlines. It's so heavily wordplay. I have no idea if this guy's actually a good rapper or not. The flow's nice.
I always get annoyed when I see people being dismissive of the use of rap in anime, and then I see that they're watching something like Samurai Champloo. Motherfucker.
I had no problem with the rap in Samurai Champloo. It was great.
I think a lot of people, their only exposure to hip hop is the radio shit. They've never gone into any of the underground scenes. The only time they've looked at anything resembling battle rap is watching 8 Mile.
Yeah.
And if it sounds like I'm being harsh, that's because I am.
It's more though, it's just I don't know how I would sit here and judge wordplay in a language I don't understand.
Especially one that loves its puns.
Yeah. There's a whole thing where Kong Ming raps for an episode. Like, he gets in a battle rap with the guy who is going to be the rapper of the show that's relevant. Like, did he do better at parts? I have no idea. If this was like written and originally done in English, I could form a very solid opinion, I think. I'm not the most versed in hip-hop, but I do like my fair share of rap, and I've heard some rap battles. But I can't sit here and judge it in another language. I can see why something like that could be distracting, considering how important the raps are to those episodes. I think it does a good enough job getting the emotions across they wanted to, though. So it's not a big hit against the show or anything. But it is something to go in knowing. The only other issue is some of these episodes, like, they'll focus around, like, a song, and that song will be important for some of the emotional moments, even when the song has absolutely nothing to do with the situation going on. That is also a little distracting. But the rest of the show is just great. I've loved every character they've introduced, or at least mildly liked them. They do a weirdly good job at translating some of those ancient Chinese strategies and stories to managing a singer. And the show's just got a lot of heart. It clearly cares about music, whoever wrote this. So despite those issues I brought up, they don't really do a whole lot to hamper the show. It's a lot of fun, some great jokes, and you care about everybody. Otherwise, yeah, it's all I've gotten around to watching this past month. Anything else interesting you've happened to come across?
One thing that is anime adjacent, if only because of its ridiculousness, but we have gotten a look at the next Kamen Rider that will be making his debut this fall, Kamen Rider Jeets. And this is the first time that we've had one that is Kitsune themed. The first look that we got was from this poster, which I'm going to share with you, that dropped a few days ago.
Okay, this looks fantastic. I have no idea what the context of anything is. This poster makes me want to see this.
Geats is the current series is Revice. Geats will be airing when Revice finishes. It'll be airing this September, and as is tradition, the upcoming Vice film Battle Familia, Geats is going to be making a cameo. Because that's kind of a tradition that's been established since 2010. Use the film to do a preview of whoever the next writer is going to be. I do know that the writer is the same person who's responsible for 01 and had some involvement with Exit with a few others, but 01 was the big entry for him. A lot of it centers around a desired Grand Prix, with a bunch of participants that each have their own writer. The winner is rewarded with the right to bring an ideal world to life, to quote the article, and it was stated that they took influence from battle royale style games, which some people are scoffing about. But if you know anything about the history of Kamen Rider, it's not the first time battle royale has been, or some sort of fight for survival has been referenced, especially in the Heisei era. The two big ones that kind of dipped into this sort of thing are Ryuki and Blade, as well as to a certain extent Gaim.
Yeah, I might finally jump into Kamen Rider when this one comes out because I just love the design.
Yeah, this is the first time we've had a Kitsune-like design.
I've always kind of liked designs that have like sharp points to them that don't look like they're screwing with your movement.
That'll be interesting to look at, to say the absolute least.
Yeah, that out of the way then. I guess we move into the topic at hand. Bullshitting about convention stories, I guess. We came in with kind of a vague idea here. I've not actually done a large number of conventions. Like, when I hit Matsuri this year, it's only going to be the 5th convention I've been to.
I think I've been to a total of 12. Should I count the times that I've been to E3?
I mean, I was at the last E3 before that opened back up to public, so... And I did not count that. I don't see E3 as a convention. I've always looked at it as a trade show. We might as well count it, though, because I got a couple funny stories about that.
The time that I went, E3 was not open to the public.
Yeah, I was there it was the year before they opened it to the public when they had Breath of the Wild up, was the year I went. Like, that was before I even ever went to any of my anime conventions. So I guess if we count that, that would have been my first convention.
I've been to Gen Con a handful of times. I've been to Anime Detour plenty of times before they decided that they don't like my attitude. There's a handful of small time anime and gaming conventions I've been to, partially because one of the people who's at one of these was helping to run things like Smash and DDR events, so I was able to meet up with him. And I've been to MetroCon in Florida a couple of times with Good Brother Shades and company, and this does bring me to my first story because we were staying at the embassy, which meant we were doing breakfast, and I end up getting a plate full of stuff, just everything I can fit on a plate, the way you do at any sort of buffet. He sees that I got a bunch of this, along with a lot of eggs, because I like eggs. I end up going through it. Then I go back for another plate. That's just as full. And he's looking at me like, "You're going to be full by the time lunch comes around, right? You know that, right?" And without missing a beat, I'm like, "Nope," because I knew what was going to happen. I was going to be moving all over the place, catching as many events and shows as I could, and I knew that in doing this, that was going to involve a lot of moving, which is why I was going to need a whole lot of energy. Plus, I need a whole lot of energy just because I'm a big guy as it is. It's even with all the weight that I've lost when all the lockdowns went down. That didn't make me any shorter.
Over 6 foot, I take it.
I'm 6'6".
Yeah, that would do it.
I'm 6'6", and my shoe size is 15 wide.
You've got almost an entire foot on me.
Mm-hmm. So I have to go to like Big and Talls or DXLs in order to find stuff that fits. It also makes trying to do cosplay interesting because I don't have any sewing ability, so I have to pay other people to do it, and sometimes they end up screwing up the measurements.
Ooh, I mean, on a plus side, you could do a height accurate Undertaker.
Whenever I go to conventions wearing my suit, everybody always thinks that I look like an Undertaker. I think the only thing I'd need is just a wig to try and get the hair. Although I'm not doing the eye thing.
Since again, I think we might as well count E3. That being my first convention, like, I went there because when I was originally doing like my written articles, I was posting them up on Based Gamer when that was a thing. Mm-hmm. All that time back.
Oh yeah, I remember Based Gamer.
Did not work out. But since I was like one of the highest, or my posts were getting like the highest views there at the time, they asked me to come along to E3 with them. It's like, I could get out of state. It'd be fun to get into E3. Finally see what it was all about, and yeah, I see why when I got there. Like, I just happened to start talking to a guy who was basically there with, like, a market analytics company. And as part of his job, he wanted to come see what was going on, talk with people about what was going on, and we kind of had a conversation. Now, this is about 5 years after, and as me and him were talking, he was saying E3 was probably going to no longer be a thing in 5 years. And I didn't think it'd be gone entirely. I figured it'd be back to what it used to be as like a small-time electronics trade show. Small time compared to what it is now, and not really be the video game epicenter. Things happened since then, but I don't know if we would really be that much different were it not for pandemic stuff in relation to E3.
I think it was starting to get opening to the public. I'd say it was a mistake because when you're doing that, you're inviting comparison to two other conventions that are in that area.
Yeah.
WonderCon, which is far wider in what it does, and AX. I know some people might bring up San Diego Comic-Con, but that's all the way out in San Diego, not LA.
Like, that hadn't even happened when me and him had this conversation. So that wasn't even part of the discussion.
The other reason why I could see why E3 might be on its way out is the rise of direct streams.
Yeah, this is one of the things I brought up to him when we were talking, is the sheer, or you start seeing more success with, like, Nintendo just doing the streaming stuff. Like, other than the Breath of the Wild setup they had, they didn't really have much of a physical presence there. And I don't know who I am ripping this quote off of. It was some tweet I saw around the time, but it was great. Like, if Reggie came out in an Arby's bathroom to announce the next Zelda game, all the same reporters are going to try to get in there to hear the story. And E3 is expensive to host at.
Some companies have been experimenting with hosting their own event. Some of them worked better than others. The worst example was the Bethesda Land incident. Yeah, because let's do an outdoor fair-like event when it's hot as hell in the middle of fucking summer in California.
Nothing can go wrong there.
Especially when you got long-ass lines for concessions. There's a reason why Bethesda never did that again.
Yeah. That is why, both last year and this year, for booking for Matsuri, I was waiting so the moment those hotels block opened, I could get one of the hotels connected to the convention center. I do not want to be outside in Houston in July.
No, I don't blame you. And imagine how I've mentioned the whole thing with the suit. Imagine the hell of wearing a black suit and a black jacket in fucking Orlando.
Midsummer, I was vicious for Level Up Expo in Las Vegas. I can imagine. It's
yeah. The reason why I think you see a lot of brighter clothes in warmer areas and darker clothes in colder areas is bright colors reflect more light, whereas darker colors absorb more light. And of course, with light will always come heat. Of course, if somebody doesn't think that they don't go together, put your hands on a lamp and see what happens.
Yeah. Like, the only other like really interesting two things about that E3 convention is I had a chance to talk with the director of Harvest Moon, not the one that became Story of Seasons here, the Natsume director. Because, like, I showed up to the...
Do you have any idea how little that narrows it down? Because there's, like, 3 Natsumes over the past 20 years.
Okay. So just to explain this to people who don't care about Harvest Moon and Story of Seasons, because this is not a story that should be tied to a fucking farming simulator. The Japanese name for the original Harvest Moon games we got here was Farm Store. Natsume published it in the US and named it Harvest Moon. So far, so good, nothing all that abnormal for the time. One day, Natsume decided, hey, we want to make farming games. We own the Harvest Moon name. It's our franchise now. So it's that director I talked to.
The former or the latter?
The latter, that's now Harvest Moon. So the Natsume knockoff Harvest Moon games.
Yeah, the ones that
nobody likes.
Yeah, all of them have not been good, and I'd say a lot of the people who have been fans of Harvest Moon have done a few things. And as an aside, I'd like to point out that there was that one Harvest Moon game, I think on the Wii U, that was so bad that a gag order on reviews was put. Because what does Harvest Moon really need? Oh, I know, amiibos and trying to be a poor man's Mario Party.
Yeah, one of those spin-off games. Yeah, but no, like
things are always really bad when critics aren't allowed to talk about it.
That first Harvest Moon game released under Natsume, it was bad.
They've only gotten slightly better since.
Yeah, like
the big problem. There's been two big problems. One, Story of Seasons came out, and pretty much played and has been much better received. Two, side stuff like Rune Factory still does pretty well for itself. And last but certainly not least, Stardew Valley. And to a lesser extent, my time at Portia.
I basically lucked into talking to the guy because when I showed up to their booth to try out like the different demos they had, he just happened to be walking by. I feel bad because I do think the other games were still bad, but as I had a chance to talk to him, he actually was listening to a lot of the criticism, it sounded like. He was taking it to heart. So that's why I feel bad, because I don't know if you played the second of their Harvest Moon games. While it was better, it was not good. So I'm looking at this like this is him really trying to make this work, and I've never felt worse like writing up a bad review of a game. Because again, I talked to the guy. He cared.
I think the reason why those recent Harvest Moon games haven't been good is because when they decided to do that little split off stunt, a lot of the experienced devs didn't come with it.
Well, they never thought they were going to, as far as I know. They just decided they wanted to do their own Harvest Moon game because it had the IP.
When you don't have the experienced talent, no matter how big of a name you put on it, it's still going to fall.
Yeah, like again, like I felt bad. Like,
let's not forget, a few years ago, people thought Blizzard could do no wrong.
Yeah. And the only other really funny thing about that E3 is we went to one of the after parties. What we didn't know, it was the one we went into was supposed to be for like the store owners who were selling all of their games for Microsoft. But they just saw we had the E3 badges and let us right in. They were sitting there basically boozing up all the game reps saying, oh, we know you guys who work at the stores are the real reason we're succeeding. And I sat there listening to them, like, just trying to butter these people up. Just the people who work, again, in the stores, like the GameStop managers and all that stuff. Something about that was just hilarious to me.
Oh, it's probably hilarious to be in a room with that many kiss asses.
Yeah. Eventually they found out, like, oh, we're not supposed to be in there. Two of us got thrown out, me and one of the other guys. We were trying to get a hold of the person who was still in there, but she wasn't answering, so the guy's like, oh, I'll just go back in. And they just let him right back in through the front door. It was not a very secure event.
And that doesn't surprise me one bit, because there's always been this, I guess the best way for me to put it is country club or boys club attitude.
Effectively, the short version from when I was at E3 is like, yeah, I can see why people think this is gonna die. Like, I gained nothing extra by being here, except for that freak chance at talking with the Harvest Moon director, whose name I really do not remember right now. That whole event seems pointless.
It was pointless then. I think it's
more pointless.
I think
now.
that issue is going to be exacerbated with time. I know that they chose to not do E3 this year because of Makoof. But even when it comes back, the problems that we've talked about are still going to be problems. They're not going to magically go away just because we're out of a pandemic.
I honestly wouldn't be surprised if it just doesn't come back like it used to after this.
What's probably going to happen is you're going to see some fusion dance between it and SDCC.
Anyway, so yeah, I think that pretty much covers E3. Unless you had any weird experiences going there.
There was the time I ended up meeting Tim Schafer. I don't think he liked me. The only good thing that came out of me going to the E3 booth, or not the E3 booth, the EA booth, was being able to ride a speeder bike, and there was a photo that I have of me riding a speeder bike. I remember that that EA's booth was so obnoxiously loud that I could hear it from the other side of the building.
Oh God.
I did end up bumping into Xavier Woods. He was just starting out the whole up down down thing.
Nice.
He did end up giving me a slight glare, not an angry glare, because I said how about those peppers? Because he has admitted to having a baby mouth when it comes to spicy. And one of the challenges that he had against Kofi was a football shootout, and whoever lost had to kick 10 soccer balls after eating peppers. It was nasty, but you know how it is. If you lose, you gotta pay the penalty.
Yeah.
There were a few other interesting people I got to meet. This was right smack dab in the middle of when GG was a thing. I went to the meetup, which ended up, I didn't know where the meetup was going to be until the day of, because it kept having to get changed due to weirdos calling places.
Yeah.
Milo was supposed to be there. He couldn't make it because of a family emergency. Dyak was also supposed to be there, but he had some complications as well. The highlight for me was meeting up with Mercedes, who I know some people didn't like her, but she was responsible for me being able to relaunch my channel when I had my technical issues, and she's always been good to me. So it was a hell of a lot of fun doing that. The downside was LA traffic. I was staying with my uncle, who was in another township, so we would be going in and out of LA. I have heard many horror stories about LA traffic over the course of my life, especially as someone who at one point worked in an auto insurance agency. Then I got to experience it for myself, and all of those horror stories were underplaying it. I need to make that explicitly clear. It was worse.
I have never been in a city in my life I hated more than LA.
I guess you haven't been in New York.
No, I have not. I've been in Chicago.
I don't like Chicago.
Neither do I.
Neither the city or the band.
I think they have like one song I like, but I can't remember what it is. I'm sure it's in there somewhere.
I just have a seething hatred for Pete Cetera.
It didn't get better after he left. It's all.
No, I remember taking a cab that one of the days that I was doing it, and cab drivers trying. I've seen people try and push the curb on intersections, but there's a difference between pushing the curb and being halfway into the middle of the goddamn road between all of the traffic, and I'm like, no, you are asking for us to get hit.
Good times. Yeah, other than E3, like, first anime convention I actually went to, Anime Oasis in Boise. Since, well, I live in Idaho.
Not to be confused with Idaho.
I've heard that joke since I was a teenager, but yes.
Well, I'll stop making the joke when it stops working.
Yeah, grown adults who've lived here all their lives still make the joke, so yeah, it still works. Mm-hmm. Not a huge convention by any stretch, but you know, it's the biggest convention you're gonna get in Idaho.
Oh yeah.
First thing I ever went to cosplay as was Kenzo Tenma from Monster. No,
probably because it'd be an easy cosplay to do.
Yeah. By the end of that day, apparently I was just a gay supernatural cosplayer. I think that was just my fate. Now, I was pissed after I actually looked up Supernatural because of that. That trench coat I had on looked nothing like any of the trench coats in Supernatural. But yeah, my first actual convention, not much happened. Other than I realized there is no kind of panel at a convention I care less about than a voice actor panel. The most boring shit was going to those.
In my humble opinion, the big reason why voice actor panels and the like end up being so boring is because the audience doesn't ask good questions.
Yeah.
I realize who I am when I say that. but a lot of the questions get really repetitive very very fast, and it's usually about how one would prepare for certain roles. I remember being at a panel that had David Matronga, who I've nicknamed Big Dave and also nicknamed him Cartoon Boy. The first nickname, that was just something that just spilled out. I didn't, especially since he's not all that bigger than me. But a lot of people might know him as the voice of Todoroki these days. I knew him as the voice of Orphan. And I've made it clear I have a special place in my heart for that anime because it was the first one that I physically bought. I bought the VHS copy of the first volume when I was at a Suncoast. There's a deep cut for you.
I miss Suncoast.
I was at a place where there was a Suncoast, a Barnes and Noble, a Walden Books, and a Borders, all within walking distance. I was fucking spoiled.
I only had the Suncoast and Barnes and.
And so I'd grab a VHS or a DVD at one of the places, and then I'd spend the entire day at one of the bookstores, especially if they had a comfy chair. But oh yeah, I forgot about Borders as well. But when I showed him my copy of the DVD collection of the first season of Orphan, he looked like a kid in a candy store because that was his first role. Asked him if he had any war stories from his time at ADV. When it came to dubbing companies in the early 2000s, ADV was my favorite, especially with all the stuff that they were involved in.
Because they were Cowboy Bebop, weren't they?
No, that was Bandai.
Oh, that one was Bandai.
They did handle the dub for Ava. They're also responsible for all the stuff that got dubbed on that anime network thing when a lot of cable networks were doing the on-demand thing. He had mentioned that when he was doing the lines, he was going through them the way you, because this was his first voice acting gig. Period. Up until this point, he had done on camera stuff for commercials and the like, and he was doing the role like you would do if you were on camera for film or stage. And somebody on the other side of the glass said, "Come on, Cartoon Boy, you got to amp it up," because he was trying to tell him that they needed to be more exaggerated, because when all you have is your voice, that's what you got to use more of. You can't rely on body language like you would if you were an actor outside of voice. The Cartoon Boy thing stuck, so I keep calling him that ever since. I say ever since. It's not like I have the same relationship with him that I do with Spike. I've never met Spike at a con. That was just a case of him appearing on the show.
Like as I said, like that first anime con, not a whole lot. I wish I spent time going to something other than voice actor panels. I probably
Why did you go to voice actor panels if you were that bummed?
The thing was, like, I kind of planned out what I was gonna do because that con didn't have a whole lot going on. Again, smaller convention. Mm-hmm. So, like, I'll check out some of these voice actor panels since those always appeared at the time, at least, to be some of the more popular things. So I wanted to get an idea of how they went. So I ended up seeing more of those and, like, some of the smaller panels, which, when I did see those, far more interesting, I thought. So, I'm gonna start getting ready for the next time I go back to Anime Oasis the second time. Because, again, still close. And this is the first time, like, I'm actually gonna start putting effort into more different cosplays. And this is the story of the first time I waxed my face. I was like, I want to do something a little weird that a lot of people would probably get, but you're probably not going to see a lot at an anime convention. So for my second convention, I went as Dr. Frankenfurter from Rocky Horror Picture Show. He shows up. His design is in a weird number of anime, if you've seen a lot of anime. I don't know why Rocky Horror Picture Show got so popular in Japan. But the point in case, he shows up a lot, so I'm like, I'll show up as Frankenfurter. The thing is, though, my facial hair grows really fast and really thick. Enough so that it's going to ruin any kind of makeup job I have on. So, a few months before, I decided to get one of my friends who recently just started doing, like, the beauty stuff to wax my face. So I knew how I'd react. Jake is not a weak guy by any stretch of the imagination. He gets like the wax on my upper lip. He can't pull it off at first. Just because of how thick and ingrained my lip hair was, apparently. When he finally got it pulled, it was a straight stream of blood down my face. Just the tears were running. It was in the 3 most painful experiences of my life. Like, didn't tear the skin or anything either. That was just the hair. And of course, I had to get my face waxed again. Because, well, obviously I did it a while before just so I knew how I'd react. So I get my face waxed second time. Nowhere near as bad. But I have another problem. My second cosplay is Shibazaki from Terror in Residence. I don't know if you've seen that one, but for those of you who haven't, he has a goatee. I have to paint a goatee onto my face, which I had just waxed to get rid of my hair. That was kind of crazy.
I can imagine that being the case.
Yeah. Yeah, it was one of the dumbest things I've ever sat down when I actually thought about what I was doing. It was wax my face, paint on a goatee. I could have perfectly grown that goatee into.
Have you attempted to do cosplays with facial hair since?
No.
I can't necessarily blame you because I'm pretty sure you've mentioned that you've done the waxing since, but it's always to clear everything off.
Yeah. Like, I did it before this convention too.
Mm-hmm.
Like, my hair is starting to grow back in, but it's a lot slower, so I can actually shave it off now, and it'll just stay smooth for the day. And considering I'm gonna be Kefka, that's a good thing.
I don't know. Kefka with a beard might be an interesting idea.
It could be funny. That said, I have been talking to a guy going as Dio, and we're gonna try to have a JoJo pose off between Kefka and Dio. It felt natural for some reason.
Yeah.
But yeah, second convention was a lot better. I went to a lot of the other just goofy, smaller panels. There was a hilarious one where a bunch of people were like the Orin High School Host Club hosts, doing like a bunch of weird little games and things with the audience. It was pretty funny. Stuff like that I find a lot funner than the voice actor panels.
Did I ever tell you the time that I hijacked a panel?
I have not heard this one.
This is the problem when you study everything. Sometimes you end up out-knowledging people who it's their job to be knowledgeable. And I'm not saying that as some sort of flex. This just happened completely by happenstance. But this was a panel talking about the concept of metaverse as it's utilized in the Persona series. And I ended up making some remarks about theme, and the two of us ended up going back and forth with myself and one of the panel organizers, and somehow our back and forth ended up taking the entire Q&A.
I mean, as long as everyone was engaged, good panel, I say.
Well, they were engaged, but afterwards he was like, you want to meet up for lunch or something, because you just hijacked my own show. I mean, I know I've got a reputation as the guy who likes to talk, but I didn't think I would go that far. I was at FallCon once, which is held in a building at the Minnesota State Fair. Although saying a building at the Minnesota State Fair doesn't exactly narrow it down much, because the Minnesota State Fair is fucking huge. It's the second largest state fair in the country. The only one bigger is Texas, because of course it is. But I remember meeting Linkara and Iron Liz. I ended up spending way too much time conversing with Iron Liz, and even got her to sign my copy of the Star Wars TTRPG from West End. When I took a photo with Linkara, one of the first things he said to me is, "God, you're tall." The last few times I've been at conventions, I end up using that as an excuse to get as many business cards as I can get.
I mean, it's not a bad idea.
Connections
do you good.
And although what I really need to do is create my own business cards to hand out to people. I still find it a miracle that when I was at Cowtown last year, I somehow managed to get John Swayze, who's done his own fair share of voice acting, including voicing Vulcan in Orphan, because I can't escape that anime, onto the show. And I just explained what I do, and that was enough to convince him to give me a shot. We ended up having an email chain that was 42 emails long because we kept having to reschedule with each other. again, whenever I am just shy of having a total of 600 interviews on my channel, and some people ask me how do I keep getting interviews. Sheer bloody persistence. That's how I do it. And sometimes there's an absolute nightmare when it comes to scheduling, and that was one of those times.
Yeah.
And I told Spike that if I ever meet him, he's going to be making a bunch of tall jokes at my expense, because Spike is a weird guy. He's a complete goof. And it was very interesting talking with Spike the 2 times that I had him on, because we did, because one would think, okay, you're having a voice actor, or you're going to talk about a bunch of voice acting gigs. Nope, not in this case. We ended up spending most of our time talking about food, because at the time he was training to be a chef, like a full on licensed chef, even though he's done cookbooks in the past.
I could have told you he was a weird guy just based on that. There's no normal people choose to work in a kitchen. I work in a kitchen. I know this.
What I find especially incredible is the fact that we were somehow able to do the interview given the time zone difference. He was on the Gold Coast at the time, and dealing with Aussie time is always a interesting experience. I think you can hear the sarcasm in my voice.
Yeah.
I do hope to do more interviews down the road, and that's really what I've started to see my convention time as a means to network. So if I go to any conventions down the road, it's unlikely that I'd be going to any panels unless I can network at them.
For me, this is my vacation. I conveniently don't require much networking for what I'm doing online.
If only I were so fortunate.
Of course, if I bring back one of my old shows, I might have to start doing that again. Like, it's something I wish I could make more time to do, but having a full-time job and having to schedule makes getting guests on hard sometimes. Bit of an easier spot to do it now since I'm pretty much strictly on mornings. Yeah, like, it's kind of weird when I got to my next convention, though, because I showed up to Level Up Expo in Las Vegas, my 3rd convention. It's where I had on my Vicious cosplay, which that was not a fun one to run around in that kind of heat, and Kuja from Final Fantasy IX. It's one of the other times I had to wax my face. Weirdest thing to note, just going from like the Boise convention to Las Vegas, is for some reason like the after parties didn't really get crazy in the Vegas one. There wasn't a whole lot of like excessive drinking anywhere going on, not a lot of parties happening, which seems out of place in Vegas.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. You're in Vegas and no crazy ass party happened.
I think what it is like a lot of the people I was talking to with from time to time there did do a lot of that stuff. This was their way of going, we're done with all that. We're just gonna do gaming shit for a weekend. We party all the time elsewhere anyway. This is our away from party home in Vegas.
I guess.
That said, it's also the only convention I've been to. People who were not part of the convention and had no idea what was going on got pictures with me. It's like, if you don't know gaming, and you just see a guy walking around dressed like Kuja, and you're slightly drunk, apparently you get a picture with him. So I've got pictures floating around in weird places, probably. I also kind of realized the gaming-focused expo, not quite as interesting as the anime-focused ones. At least the ones that I've been to.
I've seen some interesting ones when it comes to retro gaming.
Yeah, I don't think there was a whole lot of retro gaming stuff going on at Level Up Expo, at least not the year I was there. Like, still a fun expo to go to. Again, quite a few panels, more of a game focus than an anime focus. But there are still a lot of anime people there.
Yeah,
it's just kind of weird. The Vegas one just doesn't have a whole lot of interesting stories to tell other than I saw Ladybeard live. That was kind of interesting.
The only time I've actually seen anything from Ladybeard was the one time he made a cameo in this empty arena match at the Tokyo Dome for DDT in Japan.
Wait, no, Ladybeard was Boise in Anime Oasis, I think. Yeah, that wasn't even Level Up Expo. Why is the Vegas convention so uninteresting?
Is it possible that had Level Up had that been their first rodeo when it comes to doing a gaming convention in Vegas?
I think it was their 2nd or 3rd time.
That's weird.
I know. Like, weirder stuff happened in Boise. Boise was a much smaller convention. Like, it wasn't
You
a huge convention either.
Mhm.
But
In my opinion, I find these small and middle-sized conventions far more interesting
yeah, yeah.
because since you're not dealing with long ass lines, you're able to have better conversations with people. Although speaking of that, there is one person who is so synonymous with MetroCon, I'd be remiss if I didn't bring him up. Scott Mcneil. Do not go drinking with Scott Mcneil.
Why not? It sounds like a great time.
Oh, it is until the morning. No, Scott was an absolute delight when I spoke with him, and you can add him to the list of people who have commented about my height, even though he's not that much shorter than me. He's shorter than me, but not by that much. He kept bringing up the narrator time when the narrator stuff that he had been doing for D&D Online. Not entirely sure why that became a point of focus. Probably because somebody else had already hyped him up to me, and my skills as a dungeon master. There was the assumption that me using the phrase "Stay Frosty" was from Reboot. Not the case. I just happened to use that by accident, and it stuck. You know how it is with nicknames; it's never all that consistent.
I mean, I was Chuggles for a while, for some reason. But yeah, the nicknames are weird.
And everybody I've ever spoken to who has any military background has some dumb nickname that they got stuck with.
If you're gonna drink with someone like Scott Mcneil, then I think you just gotta be like me and not get hangovers. It's great.
Although there was the infamous time because in the convention family, because I was behind the scenes for a bunch of stuff. One of the people there is a licensed bartender, and she'll make some interesting drinks. And one of the more infamous ones was the apple pie experiment, which it's very rare that you give me something and I don't finish. I was one of those kids who had it beaten into their head of finish your damn plate. I just took it one step further. Yeah, I can finish most stuff, but the problem was this apple pie thing had way too much cinnamon.
Oh God.
Like I couldn't even get it. It took some effort to get it down with the first sip because do you remember the cinnamon challenge when that was the thing that dumbasses were doing?
Yeah, I remember.
You know why that's so dangerous?
Cinnamon, like, kind of poisonous?
No,
Oh, that's nutmeg.
No, it's nutmeg.
Yeah.
It's the fact that cinnamon sucks up moisture really fast, and putting a whole spoonful in your mouth, that's a good way to get you to either get dry mouth or choke or worse. It is not something to fuck with. And there was a lot of cinnamon, some vodka, and some other stuff I can't recall. But I just remember not being able to finish it, and then I said, "Yeah, I like a little bit of drink with my cinnamon," and I used it as a running gag ever since.
I don't do a whole lot of drink, but I'd probably still try that. Even after hearing what you just said, it's like, I'll still take a drink. Gotta see this.
See if the whole "it can't be that bad" situation.
Oh no, it can be that bad. I'm still gonna do it.
Yeah, but you and I have known plenty of people who said how bad could it be, and that was their famous last words.
Yep. I've been that guy a couple times in my life.
Mm-hmm.
I think, what was it, last year? It was my, anime Matsuri. That was my first really big convention. I actually found myself having a lot more fun than at some of the smaller ones, but I guess just there, I did talk with a lot of people. There's a lot of people that aren't even going to, many of the panels or events. Again, it's my only big convention one, so I don't know how different it is at, your other large ones, like your Anime Expo, which that turned into a shit show this year, apparently.
I haven't been to Anime Expo, and given that whole will they, won't they shit, I don't plan on going anytime soon.
I just don't want to go back to California again. Don't like it there.
And one rule that I decided to have is any convention that requires me to wear a mask, I'm not going.
Yeah.
Because I know I'm going to be moving around a lot, and that means I'm going to be sucking in a lot of oxygen. Yeah,
and Matsuri is one of, I think it's the only big one that just doesn't have that restriction right now.
Oh, they lifted that restriction quite a while ago.
Yeah, because last year's didn't have it at all. But I know a lot of the big ones this year still do.
And I'm not going to any of them.
Yeah.
Because after all that time not only putting up with masks, but there was a story in my hometown where they tried to enforce masks on the high school basketball team. They stopped that after about a week when kids were fainting during practice. Because if you've ever played basketball, if you've ever done basketball practice, imagine doing just basic drills or doing suicides with a mask on.
I mean, I've done some like wrestling when I was in high school, and yeah, I wouldn't want to do that shit with a mask on.
Well, just imagine doing cardio with a mask on.
It'd be horrifying.
And it's for that reason that I'm like, I'm not doing that. I am, unless especially since I can never find a mask that's comfortable.
Yeah.
When my job wanted us to wear masks, I did be a smartass and I wore the kind of mask that you'd wear in a hazmat suit. If I had the equipment, I would have tried to make a Bubble Boy cosplay and go into work with that.
But yeah, though, like at Anime Matsuri last year, like I kind of like Houston overall. It's quite a pleasant place, but it doesn't understand how weather works. So it's 88 degrees the whole of one of those days. Like, all right, it starts raining. You would think it would drop a degree or two. No, it just stays the same temperature. Rain be damned.
Yeah, that sounds about right. And I have jokingly said that Mother Nature is on drugs.
Yeah.
Which drugs? All of them. Mother Nature is on all the drugs.
Yeah, no, like a lot of the people though at Matsuri last year, again, like I'm pretty sure a good chunk of them had no interest at all in showing up to any panels. There's a lot of people just hanging out, even in the few times I was in a line, because again, I've just learned to at this point to avoid the voice actor panels. I am not waiting in lines nearly as long, even at the big conventions now, because of that. Like, one of the weird highlights is I went to one of the data game panels, where they'll just, like, grab people from the audience, do, like, that old-school dating game type thing. There was a Gaston. Oh god, was he a good Gaston. He was just...
Like, when it came to playing the character, or was he even trying to stay in character at the convention?
I didn't see him outside of the panel at all. I don't know how I missed it, but he was in character, and oh god, he was good. I will say this, there were times he was probably a little too clever with some of his barbs to be Gaston, but like the mannerisms, the speaking, it was perfect. He ended up, like, one of the people he could choose from ended up being Junko from Danganronpa. I've never played Danganronpa, but she's like the despair chick, all psycho. She got so mad, but in character with this guy. So their exchanges were hilarious. Like, the dating game panels are potentially some of the funniest parts of a con if you get some good people up on stage.
I remember being in a Attack on Titan panel where a bunch of us were selected for inspection. This was hard. Imagine having to stand in one spot. Not only can you not move, you can't even hint at cracking a smile. And I was in this thing in my suit and my hat as well. And one of the things they did to try and get me to crack is by putting candies on my hat. And I knew that they were doing it because I would feel the weight kind of distributed in interesting ways. I was the second to last person to crack. And then after all that pressure, because yep, you know how there's the whole gag of you could do just about anything to the Buckingham Palace guards and they won't react.
Yeah.
They were trying to get me to crack, and eventually they got me after being exhausted. After being exhausted from the strain of being stone faced for 3 minutes, I ended up taking off my hat, and half a bag's worth of candy just falls off. I didn't realize how much candy they had put on my head.
I'm kind of hoping they do a panel along those lines. That'd be great.
But there's been that. I do feel bad for that. There was this one Batman cosplayer who I met who I feel bad for him because he was doing a full on Dark Knight style Batman cosplay in the Orlando heat, meaning he was covered in rubber
Oh,
and all black and gray. And keep in mind what I mentioned about dark colors and light colors.
yeah.
So
Like Matsuri last year had a guy like it's like that. I felt bad for him, but he was Mecha Godzilla.
oh god.
It was a fully mobile costume. It looked good.
There's a story that the Godzilla costume in the Return of Godzilla back in '84, they had to it was a nightmare for the suit actor, and to the point where they had to drill holes in the fingertips so he wouldn't drown in his own sweat.
I believe that.
There's a reason why with suit actors they usually get people who either have a sumo, a wrestling, or a baseball background.
Like last Matsuri too. I was actually surprised with how many people were cosplaying from Bungao Stray Dogs. I might be saying Bungao wrong.
As I said before,
Yeah.
It's our show. We do what we want.
Yeah. Because it's not a show I've seen a lot of people really talk about amongst those I follow. Or even when I've checked out other anime feeds, it just doesn't seem to come up much. It's got a much more dedicated following than I noticed from its online presence. I was like the sixth Dazai from that show just there that day, as well as a bunch of other people doing different characters. I might have planned out my cosplay days differently had I known that would happen, so I could have gotten some pictures with some people. It's interesting to see what shows are really popular on the convention floor compared to what you might be seeing online. It's not always the same.
No, things can be surprising in that sense, but it'll be interesting to see what sort of shenanigans end up happening when it comes to the convention scene in the coming years.
Yeah, I'm not thinking we're gonna have as many conventions, just because a lot of them had started to shut down. A lot of them have really strict mandates.
I think what's going to happen is a whole lot of shifting, because people are going to want to go to conventions.
Yeah.
And things like artists and creators see conventions as a good way to present themselves. So I know some people are thinking that because of all the shutdowns that that there's not going to be any conventions. No, it's going to show up because somebody's going to say screw it and do one and create one themselves.
Yeah, because a lot of them don't even have to do the mandates anymore, but a lot of them are still doing it, which is alienating some people. I know a lot of people are probably getting more and more irritated at Anime Expo, regardless of your views on it.
I was annoyed with them because it's a case of shit or get off the pot.
This whole year for them seems to have been a clusterfuck.
But but given what AX wants to be, I can't exactly say that I'm sympathetic.
Yeah, I don't think there's gonna be a huge change in Matsuri. They seem to be going just fine as normal, at least from what I've heard compared to previous years. I've only been there the last year and this year. But yeah, I don't really have a whole lot of other stories at this point, just because again, I've not been big on conventions until these past few years, where I decided to start making this my yearly vacation.
I'm sure that if we do this next year, we'll have more stories.
Yeah, or at least stories from the recent conventions.
Who knows? I might even go into a convention and get myself kicked out again.
No, I have realized though, I do like running around in cosplay. I've already started planning out what next year is going to be, and I haven't even shown up to this Matsuri yet. This year, I'm opening up with Kenshin. I'm actually really happy I could find a reverse blade sword that both looked really good and follows convention guidelines that I could bring in. Kefka the next day. It's because I've always wanted to do at least one that's going to be a little more extravagant. Howl from Howl's Moving Castle the day after. And for the short day, I put together a Kotaro from Zombieland Saga. Something I could actually just make from normal people clothes. Really nice normal people clothes.
Oh yeah, I could certainly see it.
I realized what I could put together just from buying individual pieces was both going to cost me as much as if I were to like buy one of the pre-done costumes for him, like the exact same price, and it looks a lot better. And if I want, I can wear this stuff elsewhere outside of a convention.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, next year I want to try to go for Skull Kid from Majora's Mask. That one ought to be fun. Albedo from Xenosaga. That one, I don't know if a lot of people are going to recognize that. Xenosaga's got kind of a niche fan base. Dedicated niche fan base. And probably Sanji. Just because I have now come to love One Piece.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of wish I got onto One Piece earlier than I did. Because there are so many Nico Robins apparently showing up to Matsuri this year. I could have gotten so many pictures with them.
I still think the greatest cosplay photo that I ever took was somebody using cosplay to take the piss out of DLC.
Oh God, what was this?
Pretty sure I still have that the photo. I'd have to do a bit of checking, but there. And of course, that was also the year I met. That was also the year I met a duo called the Con Players, who they basically do cosplay while playing sax, and they really got a kick out of me asking them to play Brick Ballads from Big O.
Oh, nice. Just sent you a picture of one of my favorite ones I've taken. That was the Level Up Expo. Sailor Might, All Might is a Sailor Scout.
That is both amusing and horrifying.
That was probably my favorite one I just came across at Level Up Expo.
Oh, found it. It was just a guy in all black saying, "You have," with a sign around his neck that says, "You have not unlocked this cosplay yet."
Oh God, like I don't have the picture, but another good one from Level Up Expo. It was one of the dorkiest fucking things. It was like 4 of the characters from Persona 5, but they like had a cardboard cutout of the bus, or the cat bus, running around with it. There are some weird cosplays people have come up with, and I love them.
Yeah.
Like, it's not the ones that are like the best made or put together I love the most. It's just weird shit like Sailor Might.
I think there was one that was just a guy that was doing his own version of the "Change My Mind" meme. He was just sitting at a table, and on it had a sign that said, "This is a cosplay. Change my mind."
Or one of the older pictures I've seen from back in the day. It's like the guy dressed as Yuna from 10-2, but it's just a cardboard cutout like over his front, and he's like got strings attached, so he has it on the back too. It was so dumb.
Yeah, but those are always the fun ones.
They're wonderful. All right. I think this is weirdly becoming the longest recording we have done.
Yeah.
So
I'd say we've very much exhausted the point.
Indeed.